we powerfully hurtle ourselves into old men's stories.
Power and position are tied through most of my life. And when I was young, I would look, and you'd have teachers. And back then, you really respected the teachers. So you looked and you said, someone with power really is someone you should admire. And you should put your faith in them doing the right thing. And as I moved along in life, I would see all these academics that would walk around and look like they had power. And because I had to work most of my life and do a 40-hour week while I was going to school, I had to work 40 hours at the same time, all these illusions stay there because I never interfaced with them. I would go to school and I would work and I would watch them strut across the campus. And they looked so impressive. And I knew they had the answers that I didn't have. And when they talked with such authority. Man, they were powerful. They had an answer and I wanted it. I wanted to find out what they had, what answer they had that made them so powerful. So I looked at school and I said, what should I take that will give me answers for that? And I looked and I said, where would I look? And I asked her, oh, they said you should take philosophy. That's the study of everything. Gives you the base answers for what happens. I said, oh, well, I've got to do that. So I did. I took philosophy. And I studied the masters. I studied Aristotle, Plato, all of the current ones. St. Thomas Aquinas, I studied everyone out there. I read and I read and I read and I read. Man, did I have a lot of information. One of the main things I got about all that information and these powerful people is each one would contradict the other one and tell why the other one didn't have the answer. And I looked and I said, some of these answers seem pretty good. But this guy doesn't like it, and that guy doesn't like it. And I got, there might be an answer out there, but there isn't any agreement. And all these fellas that walk around the campus strutting changed in my eyes. They changed from gods walking around on a cloud of knowledge to, what would you call them? Hens? Peacocks. Peacocks.
That's what I'm thinking.
Peacocks. They turned from that to peacocks. So I would see peacocks walking around that were all show and look powerful and not have an answer to anything, but have probably a lot of information. And this position or the information they had made them think they were powerful. But what I got was then that people thinking they're powerful and people being powerful are two different things. Then the universe gave me this wonderful gift, which I didn't think was a gift at the time, and put me in the military. Well, being a truck driver that worked with 4-letter words on the dock, or a student that sat whenever he had free time at the library studying, or walking around a campus, being free sure ended when you put on a uniform. And all the rules changed. You had to do this stuff called saluting. And you had to have all these people, because they had a little extra thing on their shoulder, you had to salute them. And supposedly they tell me I'm supposed to respect them more. Well, my knowledge of power changed then, again. And what I got was, we as humans create systems of power, where power is based on something people draw on a board or write on a piece of paper. And they have the top guys called generals, and then they got stuff underneath with other positions. And these people tell you what to do. And they have real power. But different from the academics, these people did not wield their power all the time for me to learn. Most of the time, and I will say this with the military because they have a lot of wonderful things. Most of the time, I was directed with things that were good for the military and for me at the same time. And that was wonderful. That was power. But other times, people, because they just had another stripe, would totally be abusive, and they would totally abuse this item that was mandated that they be more powerful than you. And it was terrified for someone like me, that if you had an argument with someone on the dock, if you really had an argument, you went outside and you decided who was the toughest. And we'll go into some of those stories later. But I found out there that power amongst humans is not created because someone is more worthy. We have systems where people gain power that have no right to it, except they learn how to run a system. And in every movie you will see, or a lot of movies you will see this type of person. Well, I had the opportunity to experience it personally. And I'm going to tell you one story on all this power that was the scariest of all. I got time.
You do, but do you want to save it for the second half?
I might save it for the second half. Have you got something to say, Jeff?
Maybe, kind of.
Okay, well, I will save that story for the second half. And it's an awesome story.
I know.
A short interlude.
Volunteer. If I saw something that looked fun, I would volunteer. And you just don't do that. Well, one of the things that I volunteered for was to go up on the bridge and participate in working towards what you call officer of the day, or officer of the deck. Sometimes you do it one way, sometimes you do it. But you had to really work hard, and I was aboard the USS Enterprise. And one day, we'd went out under the Golden Gate, and it was stationed at Alameda, California at the time, and we were just outside it, and on flew the President of the United States at the time. His name was Johnson. And President Johnson came up to the bridge of the Enterprise with some of the close secretaries. And at the time, I was so busy doing everything, I didn't recognize any of the secretaries except one, and his name was McNamara. And Mr. McNamara was previous president of the Ford Motor Company. And they were all up on the bridge, and I had this sort of reverence to power. And then they started talking. And my reverence started disappearing more and more as I heard little debates, snipes, name-calling, put-downs. And I looked and I said, these people are deciding my fate in Vietnam and my friend's fate in Vietnam. And they're debating in snide, snappy remarks. It doesn't sound like there's any intelligence there at all. And you could see the little power struggles that were going on with these secretaries. And I looked and I got so sad because the power that I envisioned running my country was so petty and shallow. And the culmination of it was, one of the secretaries said to McNamara, "Yeah, how about the Etzel?" Well, of you that aren't of the age, the Etzel car was one of Ford's major failures as a car. McNamara didn't just sort of shrug it off. He started yelling, "It wasn't my responsibility!" and yelling back and forth and screaming. And I looked at him and I said, he was president of the Ford Company when that happened. Of course he was responsible. And he was so mad, he walked off the bridge and slammed the door. Now, I looked, and my focus on power and the people that wield it has went from admiration to what I call reality. If you're in a position of political power, that means you're very powerful politically. That doesn't mean you're good or bad. That just means you're very powerfully connected. And you're able to twist arms politically well. As you get older, the world changes, puts on different colors, and power goes from bright blue and shiny to a swirl of colors and mixtures and confusion.
All right.
Old man stories. Returning home. A lot of power.